Welcome into another edition of the Real Ballz podcast. As always, I am Ryan Squires, your host, and I am here to talk about bowling. All kinds of cool stuff to talk about today. And I got something really cool I want to show you. And if you're like me, you really enjoy history. I really enjoy looking back at history, whether it's bowling history, whether it's American history, whatever it is. I love to look back and see how things were done so that they cannot be repeated in the future or be repeated in the future, depending on if they were good or bad. Anyways, I was looking back, and I've got a lot of old bowling material from, old, like 60s, 70s, 80s bowling material. It's kind of how I learned to bowl when I was younger. It's like my Bible, basically. I would read Dick Ritker books and things of that nature to teach me how to be better, how to shoot spares. Dick Ritker wrote a couple really good books on how to strike and how to shoot your spares, and it was really fun to read that stuff because I really felt like it was making me a better bowler and making me better overall. So one of the coolest things that I found, and I was going through some old stuff and seeing what I could find, and I found a book that I thought was really cool, and I grabbed it before I headed out to run some errands. Sorry if I'm making noise here, I'm looking for something. But anyway, I grabbed it before I was heading out to run some errands, and it's a really cool book. I'm gonna share a couple things that I found in it, but it's called Lane Conditions for Bowlers. Okay, now it doesn't actually apply to today's standards. There's very, very little that would apply to what is going on right now in bowling, but it's written by Remo Piccietti. We'll go with that. Okay, I don't know, but Lane Conditions for Bowlers. It was $2.50. This was printed in 1981. Okay, so we're talking 37 years ago. 37 years ago, this was printed for bowlers, and apparently they were complaining about the same things they complain about today, lane conditions, because we were writing about lane conditions 37 years ago. Anyway, there's a couple of things in here I really like, and I wanted to share before I dive into what it is that we're actually going to talk about today. So, in this book, there is a section, and I'm going to show it to you. It's called The Left-Handed Syndrome, okay? Now, this is called the left-handed syndrome, and it cracks me up because we know if you're a competitive bowler, you know that oftentimes in today's PBA, in today's game, being left-handed could actually be a disadvantage. Being an elite bowler, it can be an advantage, most definitely, when it comes to breaking things down, but being on tour, being left-handed can be a disadvantage because if the lanes aren't set for you, if it's not going to be your week, it's not your week. So it's really cool to read this, and I'm going to read this to you. So the left-handed syndrome in this book, it says in the late 1960s and early 70s, there was a phenomenon in the industry that caused a heated controversy between the American Bowling Congress and the Professional Bowlers Association. This phenomenon, the left-handed syndrome, in quotes, saw the left-handed pro bowlers winning a disproportionate number of tournaments, so far above the statistical ratio of right-handed and left-handed bowlers that the PBA took the ABC to task over the rule concerning lane conditions. So you're talking 60s and 70s, you're talking Dick Weber, you're talking Earl Anthony. That's before Parker and people like that. You're talking about that era. And I'm not just saying that those are left-handed or right-handed. What I'm saying is those are the people who were competing back then. Carmen Salvino, 60s and 70s. So that's what, that says. And it goes, some 85% of the world population is right-handed, but the small 15% of left-handed bowlers were winning 75% of the tournaments and the money. The PBA blamed the lane conditions. They felt that the excessive use of the right side of the lane caused premature breaking down of the lane conditioner, giving an advantage to the left-hander. Nothing was ever further from the truth. Obviously, there are a great many excellent left-handed athletes, but statistically, they should win tournaments and money in a fair proportion to their numbers. When they did, so many southpaws. Why then did so many southpaws dominate the game during the late 60s and early 70s? The reason for the left-handed syndrome had little to do with lane conditions. The real culprit was the wood itself. In 1964, the ABC changed the resurfacing requirement for lanes from every 24 months to an indeterminate time based on whether the lane was within ABC numerical tolerances. This caused the problem because of the cost of lane resurfacing, many centers went 2, 3, 4, 5 years or more between sandings. The lane stayed within ABC standards as to flatness, levelness, cross tilt, and depression, but the constant pounding of the ball on one side of the lane turned the hard rock maple into a bundle of wood silvers held together with some type of coating. Therefore, the right-handers were bowling on a different surface than were the lefties. They bowled on broken, soft, spongy wood, while the lefties bowled on a solid, tight lane surface. That difference in wood texture caused the inequality of scores during the period of time. In recent years, the left-handed syndrome has almost disappeared because proprietors found that infrequent sandings, although less costly, were ruining the lane surface, and the great majority of lane owners have gone back to a more frequent sanding schedule, which has virtually eliminated the problem. There is still a minor advantage to the left-hander because of conditioner breakdown, but most lane men take this into consideration when applying conditioner. Now, keep in mind, when they were doing this and when they were saying this, they had lane men who were actually out there conditioning those lanes. They were out there actually with a mop, and probably they might have had pullers at the time, but with a mop, conditioning the lane so the lane man could essentially set the lane to block out the lefties. But that right there kills me. But what really gets me is the last thing. This just goes to show that no matter the era, whether it's 1981, whether it's 1991, whether it's 2001, 2011, 2031, it doesn't matter. The conclusion in this book says one thing. The most formidable problem the average bowler must overcome is his own attitude toward the game and the equipment. To become at least a better than average player, a bowler must be able to recognize problems and must have the proper attitude to adjust to the conditions. When the bowler achieves this attitude, it greatly increases his ability to concentrate. Many times, the difference between a spectacular player and the average man is just the ability to concentrate. Written in 1981, still applies today. That is the difference between a great bowler and an average bowler, is mental strength. So, rolling into my next category here, I am going to basically break down, and some of you pro shop operators are probably going to be way advanced on this, but I'm going to break down a couple of things on pitch and on grip fit. So I've got a bowling ball here, and I've got finger inserts in it, as you can see. And so these finger inserts are in there, and they are just typical inserts. They're oval-sided, as you can see there. But one of the things that I think I often see, and I would see it in the pro shop all the time, is that I would see a lot of bowling balls that were not pitched correctly, or pitched at all, oftentimes, especially on the fingers. So finger pitch can go in a few different directions, but I'm going to first start off with your grip, okay? So whenever you go to a pro shop and you buy a ball, and you say, I want finger inserts, they should say, okay, well, that's great. What fit you up, okay? So they fit them up to make sure that they fit your fingers. These aren't mine, so obviously they don't fit, but when they go in the ball, you'll see a lot of pro shops who do this on a regular basis. They will put these grips in the ball. And what they'll do is they will actually put these grips in the ball just straight down in there. They'll go, oh, that one's in. Oh, that one's in. It's straight. And then they'll glue them like that. But the problem is your fingers don't go straight into the ball. Even your finger grips need to be positioned in the correct manner when they're glued in. So for me, if I was going to do this ball, what I would do is I would say, okay, we've got our 31/32 hole here, these two holes for our grips, and obviously one grip is cut off, but I would say, okay, well, my middle finger, if I'm a right-hander, is going to be tilted in a little bit, okay? So I position that grip, and as you can see, it's tilted in just a little bit, okay? Now, I take the other grip, and I say, okay, well, my ring finger is a little more straight. It's not quite as turned, but it's gonna, this matches what it is that I'm trying to do. So While this one's a little straighter, it's still got a little bit of position. This one is tilted inward a little bit so that I can really get around the ball. But the point is they're not straight up and down. That's the biggest issue I see when I see bowling balls come in, is they will bring them in and they will have these grips straight up and down, and then people don't realize that they're not getting out of the ball cleanly. They're getting a rub. That's the most common reason to get rubs on fingers, is because of the fact that they're not getting the correct positioning on their grips. On top of that, the pitch is a big deal. As if you're a pro shop operator, if you are a bowler, it doesn't matter. Pro shop operators know pitch is a big deal. And honestly, pitch can be a bitch. It's all there is to it, you know, but it's very important to be correct. Especially, so this ball would be very difficult to get a pitch on, and I'll tell you why. This grip is cut off for a reason. Pro shops deal with this all the time. This grip's cut off for a reason. I needed to drill the middle finger on this ball very short, so I cut the grip off. Now, if a bowler, if I sold this ball to somebody and they took it into a pro shop, okay, and they said, hey, I want to get the pitch changed to mine. When the pro shop operator stuck their pitch gauge in there, what would happen is it would hit the bottom and it wouldn't sit on the ball. Now, getting a pitch would be very difficult. They would have to drill the hole a little bit deeper, but hope to match the pitch in there. It becomes a very difficult process. I can promise you that, when the pitch gauge doesn't actually touch the ball. But we get in here and we look at these fingers and we position them just like we talked about. Okay, so now they're positioned. And we look at it and we go, well, they're sticking up. Well, they're not sticking up on this side. This is something that's been hotly debated. It is against the rules. It's not technically supposed to be done. It gets done all the time, though, because quite frankly, nobody wants to take the time to do it. But I've always said this, and I stand by this to this day. I'll say it time and time again. If the ball is rolling over the grip that's sticking up, you got more problems with your bowling game than that grip. That's all I got to say. If the ball is rolling over the thumb, you got more problems than that thumb. I can promise you that. That's always what I've said, simply because of the fact that that ball should be nowhere near that finger, you know, with that track. If you've got that high a track, then you should be having a different drilling on the ball that you have. Now, is there an occasional time where it could hit it? Yeah, I suppose. Spare balls especially. Spare balls a lot of times roll end over end. But other than that, if you're hitting that grip that's sticking up, you got more problems than just those grips sticking up. But the correct way to do this, the reason these are sticking up, is because there's pitch. Now, fingers are pitched just as much as thumbs, okay? And it's very important. Every bowler is different. And I used to always use a trick, and it was a trick that was taught to me a long time ago. It was basically grabbing your wrist, and it shows the position at which your hand is basically at rest, okay? And when your hand's at rest, okay, if I'm a lefty and my hand's at rest and I look at my thumb is pointed right, okay? And if I look at my fingers, they are positioned in a certain manner. And you can do this on PVC pipe, things of that nature. There are ways to measure pitch that are great ways that pro shops use. But for me personally, I can look at my pitch and I can say, okay, well, I want to have some reverse pitch in those fingers. Now, reverse pitch, this is where it gets tricky. And a lot of pro shops struggle with this, but the general bowler struggles even more. If you've got forward pitch is to your palm. Reverse pitch is away from your palm. So when I say I want reverse pitch in my fingers, I want my fingers to go away from my thumb. When I say I want forward pitch, that means I want to hook in towards my palm, okay, on my fingers, hook in towards my palm, and put forward pitch in there. When I do my thumb, and I put my thumb in, and I say I want forward pitch, okay, again, I want forward pitch towards my palm. If I want reverse pitch, I want it away from my palm. Back in the day, when in our 60s and 70s books, they stretched them out as far as they could. You'll see balls where these guys barely can get their fingertips in. Their thumbs are reversed way out, because that was the only way that they could get under the ball and really get into it. And that was something that was just very different for any kind of player, because you had to stretch your hand so far. It was so difficult. Whereas today's game, you'll see a lot more people. You don't even see them going straight down into the ball or even forward at all. What you'll typically see is no lift grips. You'll go to ovals, but you'll see either no grips, oval grips, or the fingers will be kicked out. They'll be reversed. They'll be reversed out. The thumb will be forward in, which is a total opposite of what they used to teach you. They used to teach you to go straight down in and then put the thumb out in reverse based on the span length. If you had a 4.5-inch span, you had about a quarter reverse in the thumb, okay? But that was not good advice, because what it did was it made you grab the ball, okay? So this ball right here, this ball, the reason that those grips are sticking up in the back is because it has reverse pitch in the fingers. These fingers are going away from the thumb hole. What that does is that allows my fingers to be relaxed in the ball. I am no longer, gripping the ball. I'm not jamming them in and gripping it and everything else. My fingers are nice and relaxed in the ball. Okay, now the thumb hole on this, and like I said, this isn't my ball, this is my dad's, but it actually is relatively close on the span. But if you look, my thumb hole is actually going forward. It's got forward pitch. So my thumb hole has forward pitch, so the pitch is going towards the fingers. Okay, so forward pitch. Now my fingers are going away from my thumb. So if my fingers are going away from my thumb and my thumb is going towards my fingers, I've got forward pitch in the thumb, I've got reverse pitch in the fingers. What that does is that allows my fingers to be nice and relaxed, okay, in the ball. When I put them in, they're nice and relaxed, but my thumb is now going towards my fingers. So